Now that you know how to receive payments in QuickBooks, let's talk about how to take that payment you received and actually make a deposit so that it shows up in your checkbook register. Hi, this is Cindy. Welcome back to QuickBooks Desktop 2022. We're going to talk in this video about making deposits in QuickBooks. If you're invoicing customers and receiving payments, then most of your deposits will be from those payments you received. Sometimes, though, you might have a deposit that's just strictly something you're putting into the bank. Let's go ahead and flip over to QuickBooks and look at making deposits. When you look at the flowchart, the last thing you did was receive a payment from a customer. Following the flowchart to the end, you'll see the next thing is to record your deposit, and that's what you want to do. Let me just mention that new in the QuickBooks 2022, there's an icon that says Merchant Service Deposit. This has to do with your online banking that we'll talk about in Module 7, so we'll hold this until we get there. I'm going to have you follow the flowchart all the way across. Let me mention a couple of things that I want you to be aware of when you're making deposits. When you were in this receive payment window, one of the things that happened is you had an option of where to put your money. Remember that if you have not turned on the preference telling it where you'd like to put the money, this money will automatically go into an account called undeposited funds, and that's what this question is asking you right here. If I go back to the chart of accounts, I'll just show you that real quick. Undeposited funds is actually an account where money sits that's been received but not deposited yet. One of the ways to check yourself is if you have money sitting in here, but you know that everything has been deposited, then you've done something wrong. And you can see currently there's $5,633 sitting in that account. The other thing I want you to be aware of is once you receive your payment, do not go over here to the checkbook register and type in that payment. The reason is you're bypassing the record deposits window. That money will stay in undeposited funds if you put it directly in the register. The other thing is if you're typing in the register, you will have to tell QuickBooks which account in the chart of accounts does this go back to. Most people will pick accounts receivable, which is wrong because you've already been there, done that, or they will pick one of the income accounts. And if you do that, you're doubling your income. So this will mess you up every time. Do not do it this way. Follow the flowchart all the way to the end. I'm going to click on Record Deposits. This is a listing of all the payments you've collected that went into undeposited funds. What you want to do is any of these that actually were deposited into this account, you want to check off. I could check off the first two, for example, and now I have a deposit for $2,440. If I click OK, you're going to see it pulls in those two payments. If by chance you pulled in the wrong ones, you'll notice right up here there's a button that says Payments you can click on, and you can check or uncheck these. You want to make sure this matches the actual deposit that went into the bank. Do not come in here and change where it says From Account because this is where the money actually came from. It came from undeposited funds. You can see that it tells you who the money's from, the account. Over here, if it was a check and you had typed in the check number, you could pop that in. If you forgot to put in a check number, just type it right in here. There's your payment method, the class, and the amount over to the right. If you needed to add something to this, you could. You would just click on the next line down and add it. What if you, as the business owner, wanted to put some personal money into the business account? You could do that here. Remember, here's your chart of accounts, and you would just pick the correct account. In a situation like that, don't pick an income account because it's not income to your business. This is where you'd want to use one of those owner accounts that you set up. It could be the liability, or if you wanted to use it as a owner draw, you could do that as well. In this case, they actually call it capital stock. Right here, you can go ahead and put in a memo if you'd like, and then go over to the amount column and put in the amount that you're depositing. You could be actually putting in a rebate. If you were doing something like that, you would want to choose the account that the money actually was expended from to begin with. Let's say it was an office supply, you would put it back to office supplies. Just make sure that you recognize everything that you put here is not income. You'll notice at the top, make sure you have the correct account you're depositing the money to, because it's very easy to put it in the wrong account and it doesn't show up in your checkbook register. And then make sure you have the correct date of the deposit. There's also a place for a memo right here. It usually defaults to the word deposit, but you can change that to anything you like. Down at the bottom left, you'll see a couple of things. There is a field where you can keep some money from this deposit if you're a sole proprietor and tell QuickBooks which account that money goes back to. There's a place for a memo and the amount, and it would subtract it from your deposit total down here at the bottom. Let's go back up and look at a couple of options you have at the top. Here's your next and previous. If you wanted to actually go through and look for a specific deposit, you could do it that way. You could save this. You could also go through and print a deposit slip that you can actually take to the bank, or a deposit summary. We talked about the payments button. And let me just talk to you about the history button for a moment. This deposit will have a history once you save this. You can see right now it does not, but once I save it, I can go back and look at the actual payments that were received, and from there I could go back and look at the invoices that were all related to this deposit. I can also attach a file here if I'd like. I'm going to go ahead down to the bottom and to save and close, and this deposit for $3,440 will now show up in our checkbook register. Let's just go to the checkbook register and see if it's there. I'm going to choose my checking account and click OK. And now you'll see there's your deposit right there that we just made of $3,440. The blue line just means it's post dated, so don't worry about that. We're going to look more at the register in Module 7, but for now, I just want to make sure you know how to correctly enter a deposit. The other thing I want to mention is that if you had a deposit that was not related to an invoice or a payment you received, you could just type it directly in the register. Just make sure that you have the correct account chosen from this list. And again, like I said, we'll get into this a little bit later. But that's how you make deposits in QuickBooks. Let's go ahead now and go over to the next video, number 13, and talk about how to create credit memos in QuickBooks.